Welcome back to Rich Words Music, where today we're doing a viewer requested video and we're comparing two Ibanez semi-acoustic electric guitars. Here in my right hand we have the Ebony Heavy AM93ME-NT, and in my left hand here we have the AS73FM in Azure Blue Gradation. Now these are two semi-acoustic Ibanez guitars that are thoroughly in the middle range in terms of prices. Both will set you back comfortably under $1,000 or euros. Now at time of filming, it's December 2023. Expect to pay about $750 or euros for the AM93, or about between $500 and $600 or euros for the AS73FM. Now, like I said, they're both semi-acoustic guitars, but the AM93 is comfortably smaller in size, and they have different pickups too, alongside a number of similarities. And if you're someone who's in the market for a guitar like this, well, these two should definitely be on your shortlist to check out. But which one is better? And is the AM93 worth the extra $200 to $300 that you might pay for it? That's what we're going to try and find out in this video. First, I'll tell you about the specs and features of both of the guitars. Then I'll play them for you in as many different musical styles and genres as I possibly can. And at the end, I'll give you a few more in-depth opinions about my feelings on these two instruments, having played both of them quite extensively over the time that I've had them. Which one I think is better value for money, which one looks better, which one feels better, which one plays better, which one sounds better. And we'll come to a decision that may or may not help you at the end of the day, so stick around for that. But first, those specs and features, and we'll start with the AM93ME-NT. The AM93ME-NT is part of Ibanez's Artcore Expressionist lineup of guitars, and like I said, this one will set you back about 750 euros or dollars. It's not a new guitar, it's been out for a few years, but I only discovered it this year, and there's a full and thorough detailed video specifically about this guitar elsewhere if you'd like to watch that one too. So what do you get for your $750 or euros? Well, like I already said, you get a lot of ebony. As well as the Makassar ebony fingerboard, you get the front, back and sides of this guitar being in ebony, and it's a fantastic looking instrument, even though it's very difficult to show in the light. I'll throw in a bit of B-roll so you can see it in its full majesty. But we've got binding on the neck and the body as well, and we've got gold hardware, which really add to the classy aesthetic and the sort of subtle yesteryear bling of this guitar. If you like the looks of this, you'll love the looks of this, if you know what I mean. And it's classically themed throughout, because we have a pair of classically voiced Ibanez Super 58 alnico humbuckers as well. We get a three-way selector switch to move between them, and a volume and tone control for each of the pickups. We have Ibanez hardware here as well. We've got the Gibraltar Performer Bridge here, and we've got the Quik Change III Tailpiece, and those two features are shared with the AS73FM. One more flick across to the back then, just so you can see that we've got really decent upper fret access here, and the body size of this guitar is going to be closer to your Gibson or Epiphone 339 rather than your full-sized bulky 335, and that's what the AS73FM is. Moving up to the neck of this guitar, and like I said, we have this beautiful Makassar ebony fingerboard here. The fingerboard radius is 305 millimeters, that's 12 inches, so nice and flat, and we have a 43 millimeter nut here, 628 millimeter scale length, so 24 3/4 inches, and all of those specs are shared with the AS73FM. We've got medium frets on this one, and the neck itself is made of Nyato or Nyato wood. It has a poly finish, and it has a really nice, I feel like it's a D-shaped neck profile, going from medium down here to pretty chunky up at the neck end. And up at the top, you can see that we've got this classy looking headstock, and we've got gold Ibanez tuners as well. So this is the AM93ME-NT, $750 or euros, pretty decent value for money. But now let's look at the cheaper AS73FM. Now the AS73FM is a larger beast all round. It's much more similar to a 335 in terms of body size, so that's something to note straight away if you're in the market for one of these, and size is an issue. What caught my eye first with this guitar was that beautiful Azure Blue Gradation finish. It looks like a swimming pool or a summer sky or whatever. It just makes me happy to look at it. It's a really beautiful instrument. And we have a maple top on this guitar coupled with linden back and sides, and I think linden is an alternative version to using cherry wood on a guitar like this. And just a note, when I bought this guitar back in about 2017, 2018, its specifications were different to what you'll find in December of 2023 onwards. So if you see something online that's different to what I say now, I'm talking about the specs on this guitar, but these days Ibanez use different woods in certain parts of the instrument. Looking back at that top then, we've got two Ibanez humbuckers again, but these are ceramic, and they're Ibanez's classic elite humbuckers. Again, we have a three-way switch switch, and we have a volume and a tone control for each of the pickups, alongside the Gibraltar Performer Bridge and the Quik Change III Tailpiece. We also have binding to the body, neck and headstock of this guitar too. And moving up to the neck, again we've got a Nyato or Nyato neck, but this time we have an Indian laurel fingerboard. But the rest of the neck measurements are kind of the same. We've got a 628mm scale length, 43mm nut, 305mm fingerboard radius, 22 medium frets. So in that sense, a similar playing experience, and the neck profiles feel fairly similar to me. Again, a poly finish on this one, very comfy in the hand, and a very nice neck to play. And moving up to the headstock there, slightly different looking, and we've got chrome colored hardware on this one, and Ibanez tuners again. So that's the AS73FM. That'll be between $500 and $600 or euros. Is it better value for money than the more expensive AM93? That's what we're going to find out next, because now it's time to play the guitars in as many different musical styles as I can for you. Now, my rig for today is going to be my Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200 head, and we'll start on the amps clean channel with a bit of reverb. We'll play some pop and some folk and some country. Then we'll kick on my favorite overdrive pedal, that's the Grungey Lightspeed Organic Overdrive. We'll do some indie rock and some classic rock. Next, we'll head to the amp's lead channel and do some punk rock and some hard rock. And then we'll go back to the clean channel. I'll kick in my Rev G3 distortion pedal. We'll tune the two guitars down to drop D and see if they can do a bit of metal and a bit of chugging. Because why not? Semi-acoustic guitars are meant to be some of the most versatile out there, so let's test them and see if they can really give us a bit of grunt. Enough talk then. This is the Ibanez AS73FM up against the AM93ME-NT. Let's play them now, and we'll speak in more detail about them afterwards. Okay then, so that was the Ibanez AS73FM up against the AM93ME-NT, and I hope you enjoyed this battle, this comparison of the semi-affordable, semi-acoustic Ibanez electric guitars. Leave me a comment down there telling me which one you preferred and whether or not you thought the AS73FM is the better value for money choice, or whether you think it's worth paying the extra couple of $100 for the Ebony stuffed AM93ME-NT. But what I'm going to do now is give you a few more opinions about my thoughts on these guitars. I've owned the AS73FM for 4 or 5 years now, and I've had the AM93 here at home for the past couple of months. I've got to give it back to Ibanez at some point though, but anyway, it's been with me for quite a while. I've played both these guitars a lot during that time. So here are my thoughts, specifically tailored to you guys out there who might be looking to buy a new guitar, and you'll have a few things in your considerations. You'll be looking at things like how the guitars look, how they feel, how they sound, how they perform, and the price value for money thing as well. So let's start with the first thing that you see when you see a new potential guitar, and that's the way they look. And of course, this is a totally subjective thing, and these are two fantastic looking instruments, of course, in my subjective opinion. But for me personally, I can't go beyond this beautiful Azure Blue Gradation finish. That wins pretty much any battle of the guitars in terms of looks for me. I think it's a wonderful looking instrument. On the other hand, the classiness and the beautiful aesthetic of the Ebony stuffed AM93 is definitely a sight to behold. That's a wonderful looking guitar too, and I wouldn't criticize anybody for choosing that one over the AS73FM. But for me, the AS73FM wins on looks. When it comes to price then, of course, you're going to say straight off the bat that the AS73FM wins because it's a couple of €100 or dollars cheaper. But what we're going to go into now is whether or not those extra things that you get on the AM93 are worth it or not. But for about $500 or $600 and a lot less used, this is a fantastic value for money guitar, and new for $750 and used for much less than that, I think that the AM93 is worth the money that you pay for it as well. So we'll call that a draw for now, and we'll move on to the rest of the stuff and make more conclusions later. When it comes to the build quality of these two guitars, I was super impressed with both of them, and this is a trend that I've noticed with Ibanez guitars. No matter what the budget, I've had guitars like the AZES guitars, which are €250, €300. They've been set up fantastically straight out of the box. I've played these mid-priced ones, and I've been lucky enough to play a number of their Prestige and Japan-built instruments too, and they all come out of the box playing great. They often come out of the box with a fantastic low and playable slinky action as well. It's almost like Ibanez takes care that people are going to want to have a playable guitar straight out of the box. Some other manufacturers should probably take note of that. But in terms of the overall build quality and the quality of the parts that we get on these two guitars, they're actually fairly similar. We've got the Ibanez own brand tuners, we've got the bridge and the tailpiece as well. We've got Ibanez's own pickups too, albeit alnico and therefore probably a little bit more expensive to produce on the AM93. And we've got different bodywoods as well. I suspect that a lot of the cost difference is going to be in the fact that we've got a bunch of ebony in the AM93, whereas we've got maple, linden and Indian laurel on the board of the AS73FM. In terms of that overall then, I would always pick an ebony board over a laurel one, but this laurel one is actually really decent. If it was rosewood, it would be even better, but hey, you work with what you work with. And in terms of value for money, in terms of the build quality and the hardware, I've got to give it to this AS73FM purely because it feels as good as the AM93 in my opinion, and it costs €200 or dollars less. The next thing that we'd look at is the playability, and this might be a big factor for some of you guys, particularly because of the body size of the two guitars. Now here on my lap, the AS73FM is a full-sized, cumbersome beast. It's 335 sized, and for some people it might simply be too big. I find it to be a very comfortable guitar. It's really decent when you're stood up playing it with a strap. It's really decent to play sat down for me as well, but you might simply find it too large, and in that case, the AM93 might be just perfect. The AM93 is a slightly smaller body, based more around the Gibson or Epiphone 339 body size, and that's definitely going to be a little bit smaller and easier to handle if you're moving around on compact stages or something like that. So it wins in that regard. Like I said, for me, not a problem whatsoever, but it might be something that's important to you. Now, the other big playability thing for me would be the necks, and these two guitars have very similar necks in terms of feel for me, a similar profile, and they both have poly finishes on the back. For me personally, I prefer if they had satin necks, but there you go, you don't get that option with either of these instruments. The other thing just to mention when it comes to the playability is going to be the weights of the guitars. Now, you might expect expect the larger AS73FM to be heavier, and significantly so, but it's actually not. With these two specific guitars, the AS73FM is the lighter of the two. This specific guitar weighs 3.39 kilograms, which is 7 pounds 7, and the smaller AS73FM, and I guess this is maybe one downside of the Ebony in that guitar, weighs 3.4 kilograms, which is 7 pounds 8. So in real world terms, they're basically the same weight, but considering the size difference, well, in terms of weight, the AS73FM wins that individual battle. But in terms of playability, again, let's go with the compactness of the size of the AM93 and just say that one's just a little bit easier to get around. The next thing that we have to talk about then is possibly the other most important factor, and that is the sounds of these two guitars. Now, semi-acoustic guitars are meant to be some of the most versatile out there, and you'll have heard that in the playing part. You can cover almost any kind of musical stylings with them, but which of these two guitars sounds better? Bear in mind that we share lots of similar hardware, but we have different bodywoods and we have different pickups, crucially, in these two instruments. Now, I'll go straight out and say that I think both guitars do actually sound very, very similar in a lot of the sound settings, even though the amp was on the same settings at all times, and so were the pedals. Of course, I might not have been playing with exactly the same dynamics on all of the riffs, but it was close enough to dance. And the one thing that I can say is that I generally think that the AS73FM sounds a little bit bigger and fatter than the AM93 across all of the tonal settings, from the cleans through to the crunches, through to the higher gain stuff, and even the drop tuned metal as well. That kind of fits with the body. It's just a bigger, fatter sounding guitar, and it looks that way as well. Now, that might work for you tonally, or it might not. In terms of the cleans, you get a bit more fatness, you get a bit more sparkly top end out of the Super 58 humbuckers in the AM93 though, and that might be more your thing. For the classic rock and for the indie stuff, I thought where it was at with the light speed pedal was definitely with the AS73FM. It's just got that raucous rock and roll fatness to it and a mid-pushed sound that I really, really love. And as we started to get more up into the high gain stuff, we were doing some palm muting for the pop punk and also for the metal as well. That was where the slightly thinner and more top-end sound of the Super 58 pickups in the AM93 started to win through. They had just a tad more clarity for that kind of music, and they worked in that sense. For a classically voiced guitar, and I said this in the dedicated video about it, the AM93 is absolutely wonderful for metal, even though I don't think any of you watching this video would be buying either of these guitars to play metal. But at the end of the day, they sound 90% similar, in my opinion, for almost everything, and in terms of tones, I wouldn't really want to pick a winner. It's a totally subjective taste thing. Give me one of the two guitars though, just in a blind sound test, and I'd probably most times pick the AS73FM. But what about other guitars that are out there? You might have been watching this video and thinking, okay, I like the idea of this, but are there other options? Well, I would simply say go Epiphone. There are Epiphone 335s and 339s. There might not be new ones out at the moment, but you can always find used ones, and they're always going to be decent value for money, priced similarly to these guitars. And if you're looking for a similarly performing beast at a more budget, price-friendly level, check out the Harley Benton HB35 Plus. I've got plenty of videos on that guitar, and I've also shot it out against the AS73FM. A wonderful instrument and definitely worth taking a look at if you're into a semi-acoustic guitar idea, but don't quite have the money for one of the Ibanez's. At the end of the day then, it's time to decide which of these two guitars is better and which one I would recommend more, and it's quite a tricky decision really. They're both fantastic guitars, and I have no hesitation in saying that they're both great guitars for the money as well, so check them both out if you're kind of interested. But for me, well, we've talked about all the facets of the instruments. We've talked about the way they sound, the way they feel, the way they play, the way they look. We've talked about the prices and the value for money, and for me at the end of the day, they're very, very similar in many regards. Now, the biggest differences for me are going to be the playability with the body sizes and the sounds with the different pickups. But the pickups are actually fairly similar in many permutations, and you could get them to sound almost identical with a little bit of tweaking. So in that regard then, because the AS73FM is $200, $250 or euros cheaper, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that for me, this one is the better value for money option. And I'm very happy that I happen to own this guitar. I've been inspired by it over and over again, improvement over the past 4 or 5 years since I've owned it, and I hope to own it for many years to come. That's not to say I wouldn't want to not own the AM93 as well. That is a really, really decent guitar as well. But for me personally, all of my needs in this sort of ballpark are covered, and covered well enough with the AS73FM. I hope that this video has answered all of the questions that you might have had if you're comparing these two guitars, but if you've got any more questions about anything, drop me a line down there in the comments and I shall do my best to answer you fully and completely. And if you're still around, it would really make my day if you wanted to give the video a like, or maybe even sub to my little channel, because that really does help. But that's been it for today's video. I've been Rich for Rich Words Music, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.